Some mornings feel like a quiet betrayal. Your eyes open, the day has barely begun, and already something inside you has tightened. Before the light has fully reached the room, your mind is scanning, comparing, bracing, preparing. It starts so early that you can mistake it for personality. You call it being realistic. You call it responsibility. You call it adulthood. But underneath those names, there is often a softer truth. You have simply practiced waking up in tension for so long that it started to feel normal. And that matters more than most people realize. Because the way you meet the morning is rarely just about the morning. It becomes the emotional posture you carry into your conversations, your choices, your pace, your body, your expectations, and even the way you speak to yourself when nobody else can hear. A rushed morning does not always stay in the morning. A harsh first thought does not politely remain in bed. It travels with you. It colors things. It becomes the lens. So when you say you want a different life, sometimes what you are really saying is that you want a different beginning, not a dramatic reinvention, not a new personality by next Tuesday, just a different first meeting between you and the day. That is where the real shift begins. Because healing is not always loud, it is not always an arrival. Very often it is a new tone, a new sentence, a new pause, a new refusal to hand your nervous system over to old patterns before your feet even touch the floor. You may have been taught that mornings are for getting ahead, fixing yourself, proving your discipline, squeezing more into the clock, but that approach can become one more place where you perform instead of connect. One more stage where you try to earn worth before breakfast. One more ritual of pressure disguised as self-improvement. Let me say something. Clearly, your morning is not supposed to be the first battlefield of the day. It is supposed to be a doorway. And what most people miss is that a doorway does not ask you to arrive polished. It asks you to arrive present. It asks you to notice who you are being when the day first opens. It asks you to witness the emotional self that wakes up before the social self gets dressed. That is why changing your morning can begin to change your life. Not because you suddenly become perfect, not because every day becomes magical, but because the earliest moments of the day are often where your inner identity is most unguarded and most rehearsed. The first thoughts are not random. The first feelings are not trivial. They are clues. They reveal what your system expects from life. They reveal the relationship you have built with yourself. And if that relationship has been shaped by criticism, urgency, or silent disappointment, then the morning becomes the place where yesterday quietly re-enters. Stay with me here. The problem is not that you are bad at mornings. The problem is that many mornings have become a replay, the same emotional script, the same internal weather, the same old self stepping forward before the new day even has a chance to speak. That is the paradox. You want a different life, but you keep greeting it with the same internal state. And the beautiful part is this: you do not need to control the whole day to begin changing that. You only need to change the first conversation. Not the whole life, the first conversation. Because the day usually follows the tone that begins it. So if you have been waking up heavy, guarded, self-pressured, or already emotionally late to your own life, this is not proof that something is wrong with you. It is proof that your mornings have been carrying more than time. They have been carrying memory, conditioning, old emotional agreements, habits of thought that formed in pain and then kept repeating because repetition feels safe even when it hurts. And once you see that, the morning becomes more than a schedule. It becomes a healing space, a place where you stop rehearsing the old self and begin gently to meet the day as someone who does not need to be pushed into worthiness. That is the shift, not forcing a better day, becoming kinder at the beginning. Because sometimes the life you are asking for is waiting inside a softer first 10 minutes. What happens in the morning is often so automatic that you do not question it. You wake up and immediately reach for the familiar thought, the familiar worry, the familiar pressure, the familiar inventory of what is unfinished, what might go wrong, what still needs fixing. Your body learns this sequence. Your mind gets efficient at it. It becomes fast, invisible, practiced. This is how emotional wiring works. Repetition becomes expectation. Expectation becomes identity. Identity becomes atmosphere. So, if your first inner movement each morning is tension, your system starts to believe that tension is how a day should begin. If your first thought is self-correction, your system starts to believe love must come after performance. If your first response to being alive today is a sigh, a brace, a flinch, then your whole inner world begins organizing around survival instead of connection. And none of this means you are weak. It means you are patterned. There is a big difference. Weakness says there is something wrong with your character. Pattern says there is something practiced in your system. Character is shame. Pattern is information. And information can be worked with gently, honestly, without turning healing into another competition. This is also why so many people try to change their lives and feel defeated. They focus on goals without noticing the emotional climate they wake up inside. They build plans on top of panic. They set intentions on top of self-rejection. They try to create peace while beginning the day in a private argument with themselves. That is exhausting. It is like planting seeds in clenched fists and then wondering why nothing grows. Your morning does not need to become a spiritual performance either. It is not about saying the perfect words in the perfect order while floating around your kitchen like a fully enlightened sunrise goddess. Some mornings you will still be puffy, annoyed, confused, and deeply unconvinced by your own alarm clock that does not cancel the work. Honestly, if your alarm had a personality, some mornings you would file a complaint, and yet even there, healing can begin. Because healing does not require elegance, it requires awareness. Now I know what you might be thinking. If mornings are already hard, how am I supposed to add one more thing? But this is not about adding pressure. It is about removing unconsciousness. It is about noticing what is already happening and choosing in one small moment not to abandon yourself inside it. That is why the root cause matters. Most difficult mornings are not caused by laziness or lack of discipline. They are shaped by an inner system that learned to prepare for life by anticipating stress. Maybe you learned early that love came with expectations. Maybe rest never felt fully safe. Maybe achievement became your language for belonging. Maybe you carry grief that never quite sleeps. Maybe your body has gotten used to living one step ahead of disappointment. So when you wake up, your system does what it has been trained to do. It protects, it predicts, it tightens before anything has even happened. And spiritually, there is another layer. The morning is one of the few times you meet yourself before the world tells you who to be, before messages arrive, before roles activate, before comparisons start shouting. It is a sacred threshold, even if it looks ordinary, which means if you enter that threshold unconsciously, you can lose yourself before the day has even asked for you. This is why small morning shifts matter so much. They are not cosmetic. They are relational. They change the way you stand in your own presence. They interrupt the old agreement that says the day gets your fear first and you get your tenderness later. No, my love, you get your tenderness first. That one reversal can change more than you think. Because from that place, your choices begin to change. Not instantly, not theatrically, but quietly and truly. You answer differently. You rush less. You notice more. You do not hand every inconvenience the power to define the entire day. You start responding from yourself instead of from your old reflex. This is the kind of healing that looks small from the outside and life-changing on the inside. So let me give you a simple framework for it, something kind, something you can actually carry into real life, not a system to master, a way to return. I call it the Dawn Reset. 3 steps. Notice, soften, choose. Notice is the first act of honesty. Before you try to fix the morning, you simply tell the truth about what is there. What is the first thought? What is the first feeling? What happens in your chest, your jaw, your stomach, your breath? Do you wake up already apologizing to the day? Do you wake up reaching for urgency like it is your job? Notice does not judge. It witnesses. Soften is the second act. Once you notice the pattern, you do not attack it. You do not say, "Here I go again, I am hopeless. I should be better by now." No, you soften the grip. You loosen the inner fist. Maybe that means one slower breath. Maybe it means placing a hand on your body and saying easy. Maybe it means not picking up your phone for 1 minute. Soften tells your system that awareness is not a threat. Choose is the third act. This is where you gently interrupt the old script with one intentional movement, not 10, one sentence, one pause, one thought that is more truthful than the old fear, one small act that says, "I will not let habit decide who I am this morning." Choose is how the new self begins to practice. That is the dawn reset. Notice, soften, choose. Simple does not mean shallow. Simple means repeatable. And what makes this powerful is not intensity. It is consistency with kindness. You are not trying to dominate the morning. You are trying to stop disappearing inside it. So let us make this real. When you first wake up, before you do anything else, try one moment of noticing, not fixing, not improving, just noticing. Ask yourself, what entered the room with me today? Is it dread? Is it pressure? Is it numbness? Is it sadness with no clear name? Is it a low hum of resentment because you are already tired of carrying so much? Let the answer be simple. Let it be honest. That alone can be a profound shift, because many people spend years being run by feelings they never pause long enough to name. But what you name, you can relate to, and what you relate to, you are less likely to become. Then soften. This can be almost embarrassingly small, and that is part of the beauty. You might take one slower inhale and one longer exhale. You might sit at the edge of the bed instead of jumping into motion. You might place your palm over your heart or your stomach and let your body register that someone kind is here. You might say, I do not need to scare myself awake. That sentence matters, because so many people have learned to motivate themselves through pressure. They think stress is what gets things done. They think harshness creates momentum. Sometimes it creates movement, yes, but it also creates fragmentation. It splits you from yourself. It teaches your body that the only way to start is by tightening. Over time, that becomes expensive. So experiment with a different beginning. Try drinking your first sip of water without scrolling. Try opening the curtains before opening your mental emergency folder. Try standing still for 10 seconds and feeling your feet before running into your obligations. Try replacing the first self-critical thought with a truer one, even if you do not fully believe it yet. Something like, today does not have to be attacked, or I am allowed to begin gently, or I can meet this day without leaving myself behind. Then choose. Choose one action that matches the life you want to build from the inside. If you want more peace, speak more slowly for the first 5 minutes. If you want more self-trust, keep one promise to yourself before responding to everyone else. If you want more steadiness, sit in silence before letting noise into your head. If you want more love in your life, begin by using a kinder tone with the person who wakes up in your mirror. That is not selfish, that is foundational. And here is what most people miss. You are not choosing a mood, you are choosing a direction. Moods may still wobble, energy may still fluctuate, the day may still get messy because life is still life. But direction matters. A soft direction changes how you recover. It changes how quickly you return when stress arrives. It changes whether one hard moment becomes a hard day. You do not need a perfect morning routine for this. You need a conscious entrance. For many people, one of the strongest experiments is changing the very first sentence they say to themselves. Listen carefully to what that sentence usually is. Maybe it is, I am already behind. Maybe it is, not this again. Maybe it is, I have too much to do. Maybe it is a wordless groan that somehow contains your entire biography. No judgment, just notice it. Then offer a new first sentence. Make it gentle, make it believable, make it clean, not a grand declaration that your nervous system will roll its eyes at. Something simple. Today, I begin here. Or, I am still learning how to meet the morning kindly. Or, I can start this day without punishing myself. Let your body hear a voice it can trust. Another small experiment is to delay input. Give yourself 3 to 5 minutes before checking messages, news, or demands. Those early minutes are impressionable. They shape your internal pace. If the first thing you take in is urgency from the outside world, then your own inner voice gets pushed to the back of the line again. Protecting those first few minutes is not avoidance, it is leadership. You can also create one physical anchor. Light a candle, open a window, touch the wall, and feel the room. Stretch your arms, stand barefoot on the floor. Wash your face slowly instead of mechanically. These tiny acts tell the body, we are here now. We are not just launching, we are arriving. And yes, there will be mornings when none of this feels graceful. There will be days when you try to breathe kindly, and your brain responds like an over-caffeinated squirrel holding 12 tabs open. That is allowed. You are not failing because your mind is busy. You are practicing because your mind is busy. That is the work. Please do not turn softness into a new standard you must perform perfectly. That would be the old pattern wearing linen. What matters is not whether every morning feels peaceful. What matters is whether you are building a new relationship with the beginning. Whether you are slowly teaching yourself that the first moments of the day can hold truth instead of pressure, presence instead of panic, kindness instead of immediate self-abandonment. And this leads to the deepest part. You are allowed to stop treating every morning like a test of your worth. You are allowed to stop earning your right to feel okay. You are allowed to stop using pressure as your first language. Let that land. Because somewhere along the way, many people learned that tension meant they cared, that rushing meant they were responsible, that criticism meant they were improving, that emotional hardness meant they were strong. But sweetheart, strength is not the constant refusal to be tender with yourself. Strength is the willingness to remain kind while becoming honest. Strength is letting your nervous system unclench without calling it laziness. Strength is beginning the day without immediately turning against yourself. You do not need to wake up impressive. You do not need to wake up optimized. You do not need to wake up already winning. You only need to wake up and stay with yourself. That is enough for a beginning. So if you are tired of mornings that feel heavy before they even begin, hear this clearly. You do not need to force yourself into a better life. You need a gentler entry into the life that is already here. You need to stop handing the first sacred minutes of the day to old fear. You need to stop letting habit introduce you to yourself. There is another way to begin. A quieter way. A truer way. A way where the first voice you hear is not the inner critic clearing its throat, but your own deeper wisdom saying, slowly now, We are not doing that old violence today. That is the healing, not a miracle, not a performance, a relationship. And relationships change through repeated moments of honesty and care. The way you trust someone changes when they stop startling you. The way your body relaxes changes when it learns it will not be shoved every morning into alarm and accusation. The way your heart opens changes when it realizes the day is not arriving to judge it. This is why the morning matters so much. It is where self-respect becomes embodied, not as a slogan, as a tone, as a pace, as the absence of inner cruelty. And when that tone changes, your life begins to change in ways that are easy to underestimate. You speak to people from less defensiveness. You make decisions from more clarity. You recover from stress with less collapse. You notice beauty sooner. You do not chase chaos just to feel awake. You become less available for what drains you because you are no longer starting the day already emptied out. That is what becomes possible. Not perfection, not guaranteed transformation by the weekend, but a real, living shift in the way you inhabit your own life. So tomorrow morning, before the old script rushes in, pause. Notice what is there. Soften what is clenched. Choose what is true. That is enough. Enough to begin rewiring the morning. Enough to begin relating to yourself differently. Enough to stop repeating yesterday at sunrise. And if this lands somewhere deep in you, keep staying close to that feeling. Let it follow you into the next dawn. Let it become practice. Let it become a quieter way of being alive. Your life does not only change through big decisions. Sometimes it changes because one morning, instead of meeting the day with fear, you met it with presence. And that, darling, is how a different life begins.